at the site of the Oriskany battlefield here in central upstate New York. And as you can see behind me, well, we have made it here to a place I've wanted to come for a very long time. So here in Oriskany, the story that developed was that on the 3rd of August, 1777, General Barry St. Leger, a British general, reached Fort Stanwix in modern Rome, New York. He found it held by colonial forces and it began a siege. Soon after, to relieve the fort, about 800 men of the Tyrone County militia, commanded by German-born General Nicholas Hermaker, and a contingent of the Oneida Nation, who were the allies to the American forces during the American Revolution, began marching westward down the Mohawk Valley, following a military road, which is roughly in this direction. Now, when St. Leger learned of their approach, he dispatched a force of about 100 loyalist troops and roughly 400 Seneca and Mohawk Native American allies to the British. They were to intercept the column in this valley or ravine that you see below me along the military road. And we'll talk more about that interception when we get down to the ravine, because there's a lot of cool history that's going to happen in this location. It's going to shape the rest of the American Revolutionary War. So here at Oriskany, you have this towering monument, and it says here, the Battle of Oriskany was fought on the 6th day of August, 1777. The British invasion here was checked and thwarted by General Nicholas Hermaker, intrepid leader of the American forces, though mortally wounded, kept command of the fight till the enemy fled. The lifeblood of more than 200 patriot heroes made this battleground sacred forever. This monument was built in 1883 by the grateful dwellers in the Mohawk Valley, under the direction of the Oneida Historical Society, aided by the national government and state of New York. So this is definitely a historic place here in New York, and one I've always wanted to see. And this monument I've seen in pictures time and time again, and it is definitely worth seeing in person. On the sides of the monument here, you have a depiction. I think this is Hermaker as he's wounded mortally. You can see him holding his leg. He was shot in the leg during the battle. He's commanding his troops. You can see him with his arm pressed forward, directing the troops during the battle from a piece of high ground. On this side of the monument are, I think, the names. Yes, the names of the men who fought here. Most of them died, and their names are inscribed on the reverse of this monument. That's a lot of names. That's just who they know. And then as you come to the other side of the monument here, you'll notice the depiction of a soldier standing there stabbing a Oneida warrior, or it may be a Mohawk warrior, either one, but it is highlighting the brutality of this battle. So they do have a little interpretive center here, but unfortunately for some reason today it is closed. Could be because of the manpower issues. You don't ever know, but it's okay. We know a little bit about this battle ourselves. But right behind the monument that you see behind me, here at the main portion of the battlefield that you come in on, there's a marker here behind me called the Rally, and we're going to check that out and examine the history of this spot. So it says the Rally. Both sides were grouped during a driving rain. Hermaker's troops concentrated here, forming an irregular circle. The attackers were on all sides. So roughly where this monument is, and in this area where we're standing, is where General Harmaker's troops and Oneida warriors would form kind of a irregular semicircle, and they're going to be attacked from all sides in this position. This was a rallying point. This is after they've been attacked on the military road. They're trying to make their way right here, and then this is where they're going to make what you may call a last stand. And this is the location where that happened. Now, as you can see around me, you can see that this is a bit of high ground. Now, was this ground like this at the time of the battle? I do not know. It is highly possible it was, which will make sense of why he chose this ground here to build his rallying point. And you can see it very well on this edge of this semicircle. So maybe it was like this at the time. It is highly possible. So as we make our way down these interpretive plaques, there was a driving rain during this time frame. And when this battle was raging on, that's going to do a few things. And we'll talk about that as we go into the ravine. But right here, this is talking about the alliances that were drawn following the battle here. When British General Barry St. Ledger received word that the militia was coming, he sent out a formidable attack comprised of mostly the Mohawk and Seneca warriors working with the Sir John Johnston's King's Royal Regiment. And Colonel John Butler and other loyalist rangers were sent here to ambush the militia forces and stop them from reaching the fort with supplies and men. The British suspected and promised their native allies an easy fight here at Oriskany. They said, don't worry about it. It's going to be an easy trot of the militiamen is coming here. They're going to run like scared little rabbits. The Tryon County militia and the Oneida comprised of a battle force of about 800 men and at least one woman that they know of, and 15 heavy supply wagons pulled by oxen. Their noisy relief train stretched the military road for over 1 mile. That's a long line. They were untested in combat, and the colonial forces determined to relieve the fort's garrison of Continental soldiers, and perhaps more importantly, to prevent the British from gaining control here in this area. Behind them to the east were homesteads protected now by only their women and children. They're gone. They're coming here. They're coming to relieve Fort Stanwix. They're leaving their kids, the women, children, the elderly, everything else behind. And the militia could not afford to lose this fight. Well, here are some of the people who's going to be involved here at Oriskany. This is General Nicholas Harmaker, who was the hero to the Patriots' cause. He was German, and he maintained his calm during this storm. He directed his troops despite being badly wounded in the leg, and he was key to the success of this battle. Harmaker died 10 days following this action here at Oriskany due to those wounds. This is Lieutenant Samuel Campbell of the 1st Regiment of the Tryon County Militia. He led the colonial forces from the field after General Harmaker was wounded and Campbell's regimental commander was killed. This is Joseph Brent. You can see his Oneida name there. Or his Mohawk name there. He was a Mohawk captain who sided with the British during this fight and during the war. Now, this is Corn Planter. He was a chief in the Seneca Nation of Indians at the age of 18. He also was sympathetic to the British cause. This is Sir John Johnson. He raised a regiment of loyalist soldiers in Canada called the King's Royal Regiment of New York, and they were also known by the name of the Royal Greens. He was also British. This is Colonel John Butler, who was instrumental in inducing the Senecas to fight on the behalf of the British. He's the one who convinced the Senecas, hey, come fight for the crown. This is a good thing for you. So that is some of the key individuals here during the Battle of Oriskany. Now, this interpretive plaque is talking about the clash of the cultures. It's talking about the Native Americans versus the colonials and the British. The outbreak of the Revolutionary War in 1775 inflamed existing divisions within the Mohawk Valley's European communities and eventually affected the individuals as well as the tribes of the Iroquois Confederacy of 6 nations. It forced them to choose sides in the conflict. Neighbors fought against neighbors, brothers fought against brothers. Men suspecting of supporting the king were required to sign oaths to Congress of loyalty and to the Revolutionary War cause. Those who refused were harassed and beaten badly. Many fled Canada to safety during this time. As European tensions rose, debate within Iroquois Confederacy tore at the centuries-old tradition of great peace that bound the tribes together. Unable to remain neutral, the Iroquois Confederacy split over which side to support. Most of the Oneida and Tuscarora supported the revolution and fought with the New York militia, and most of the Mohawk and Seneca fought with the British. The Cayuga, I'm probably going to butcher this, but Cayuga and Onondaga remained neutral until 1779. Individuals throughout the Iroquois Confederacy, however, were free to follow their own convictions. So what are the results of this battle, and what are the long-term effects of the battle here at Oriskany during the American Revolution and for the Seneca, the Mohawk, the Oneida peoples? Well, this battle resulted in over 500 of these American Loyalist colonists and Oneida warriors being killed in the ambush here. The British, Seneca, and Mohawk only suffered just over 60 casualties. General St. Leger had suffered a pretty good bit here, and he decided to pull out of Oriskany, go back to Fort Stanwix. When he gets to Fort Stanwix, he finds their camp raided. They lay siege to the fortification even more, but it is getting nowhere. And what this does is it angers the Seneca. It angers the Mohawk, and they say enough with this, and they pull their support and leave. Most of them head towards Canada. And St. Leger, as a result of this, has to head back to Canada himself, leaving General Barragon in a pickle. So what ends up happening as a direct result of the battle here at Oriskany, Fort Stanwix is saved. Even though the militia doesn't make it there, unknowingly, they save that fortification. They did exactly what they were setting out to do. General Barragon loses the Battle of Saratoga. St. Leger goes back to Canada. Now, the aftermath for the Native American nations from this battle is the Mohawk are not recognized. They are not here in New York and recognized in New York until 1993. 1993. And even till this day, a lot of the Seneca Mohawk will not have anything to do with the Oneida tribe, and the Oneida will not have anything to do with the Seneca and Mohawk because of their actions and their choices at this place at Oriskany in 1777. That's a long, long time from the date of this battle to 1993. That is a long time to deal with the aftermath of your choices. The aftermath of those choices are still being dealt with today. So the Oneida, the Seneca, the Mohawk break an over 100-year peace here in this location. And their tribal history for all of those three are shaped even until today. So when you think about the Battle of Oriskany, you think about what saved the American Revolution, you think about what led to the direct impacts of the American Revolution. It wasn't that the Americans were mad over taxation without representation. That wasn't it was one of the main reasons why the American Revolutionary War was started. But some of the other main reasons were that division that British made that said, okay, colonists, you got to stay east of this line. You cannot expand westward of this line. This is Native American land. Well, they didn't like that too much. They wanted westward expansion. So the Oneidas, well, they sided with the American colonists because they thought doing that would make their life better. They thought they would be able to keep their lands. They thought it would be best for their tribe to be able to have a future in that decision. Well, the Senecas and the Mohawks thought otherwise. They thought their best future plans were with the British. They thought that was going to best influence and directly have the best ties with their tribes. So that's the reason why the people, divided. And a lot, I mean, even some of the Oneidas still went to the British side. So you literally had brother against brother, family against family, as the direct result of some of the actions that occurred during the American Revolutionary War. And then here in the Oriskany, a 100-year peace was broken, and these three tribes just outright massacred one another. So we're going to head down to the ravine, and we're going to discuss the ambush itself and just how brutal it was and what the men here had to endure during the battle at Oriskany. All right, so change cameras here because batteries are dying left and right on me. But we are headed now to the actual ravine where the initial attacks are going to be launched here by the Senecas, Mohawks, and the British here at the Oriskany battlefield against the Oneida and the militia American colonists who are making their way down a military road in a ravine. Now, if you're familiar with a show called Battlefield Detectives, we had the opportunity to examine some of their findings here from Oriskany, and there was some interesting things that was discovered about this particular battle and the way that it went here. So what we're going to do now is we are going to head into the woods you see right behind me, and we're going to see actually where this ambush and initial assault from the troops was initiated in August of 1777. So this is kind of the site you would have had in 1777, except for this field was wooded. This was not a field at the time. This turned into farmland some years after the battle here at Oriskany in the later 1800s, early 1900s. And what I am doing is I am actually trying to find the trailhead here that leads into the ravine, and as we call it, the Bloody Creek, as people call it now, that goes into this ravine here at Oriskany. Okay, I have no clue. Let's see what is going on there, and I don't think I want to know. Maybe there's a seance going on at it. Oh man. So we have made it to the portion of the battlefield where General Hummerker is going to be wounded, and somewhere in this approximate area, according to this marker, near a beech tree where he is setting and directing the battle. And this has got the 40-mile route that they took on their way to Fort Stanwix during this time frame. And what we're going to do now is we are going to leave this marker, and we're going to head, and I'm going to bring you with me, to the area where the attack was first initiated. And you can just tell how beautiful this place actually is now. So right here is an interpretive plaque talking about the ambush on August the 6th, 1777 by Sir John Johnston and Joseph Brant, who prepared the ambush along this military route to Fort Stanwix. Now, in their command, they had the Seneca and Mohawk warriors. So Joseph Brant, who is familiar with this terrain, selects this area where I'm now walking along the military or old military road as the scene of the ambush. And he selects a spot along a stream that runs in the bottom of this ravine. Today that spring is referred to as the Bloody Spring. Now, as the ambush ensues, there's going to be a lot of blood spilled on this ground, and that stream was said to run red with blood for weeks. But as we make our way down the old military road, you're going to come to a marker that says ambush started here. The militia column on this way to the relief of Fort Stanwix marched into this ravine on August the 6th, 1777, were ambushed by the Loyalists and British, and these attackers came out of the woods on the west, south, and north. What they failed to put on the sign is that over half of the British forces aren't Loyalists. They're not British regular troops. Over 400 of these men are Seneca and Mohawk warriors. Now, the Mohawk have a keen sense of warfare. These are some of the Senecas and Mohawks are some of the most well-trained warriors of the time frame, along with the Oneida. They have their own ways of conducting warfare, and usually it's guerrilla warfare. So here in this location is where the ambush would initiate. And if you'll notice the creek that runs through here, this is the creek known as Blood Creek now, where the creek is said to have been covered and run red with the blood of all of the men killed. Why? Why were there so many of the colonial soldiers from the American colonies and the Oneida warriors killed in this location, and so little British? Over 500 of the American colonists and the Oneida warriors lost their lives right here, while just 60 of the British, Seneca, and Mohawk soldiers lost their lives along this old stretch of military road. Well, there's a few reasons for that. As the colonists were making their way in with the Oneida warriors, this road was just wide enough to go two abreast. They didn't figure an attack here. This is all a wooded area, and they thought it would be crazy to try to attack along this road. Well, they had oxen pulling behind them. It had been raining that day. It was wet, muddy, making it for a slow go through this terrain. And on top of it, when it's wet and muddy at the time and you got flintlock rifles, it makes it very hard to fire your rifle. So what you have is the Mohawk and the Senecas who are hiding behind some of these trees in this ravine. They're waiting for the opportune time to attack the colonists who are moving down this military road. As the signal lets out, the American colonists fire. As they fire, the Mohawk and Senecas are laying in wait, and when they fire, they attack. So the Mohawk and Senecas will usually, and the Oneida as well, will usually wait for the enemy to fire his rifle. Then they'll come out charging with a war club or with their scalping knife, tomahawk, whatever they may have, which was all used in this location. Well, flintlocks take a lot more than 6 seconds to load, but that's all it took for a Seneca or Mohawk warrior to cut you down with a tomahawk. So that was one of the reasons why there were so many killed. Another reason was the muskets, because of the weather, were misfiring. And that led to a lot of mishaps here in this location that led to more men being killed. So there were a lot of factors that went into this during the battle of why there were so many American loyalists killed and Oneida warriors killed in this location. And a lot of that was contributed by those factors I just mentioned. So all of these factors are going to help contribute to the losses here for the colonists in this location. And it is unfortunate that these events transpired, but at the same time, it's fortunate because as a result of this battle, Bayregon is going to be abandoned and Saratoga is going to fall into the hands of an American colonial victory. But what people fail to realize is the role of the Oneidas, the role of the Senecas, the role of the Mohawks, the role of the Iroquois Confederacy of 6 Nations, and their direct impacts to the American Revolutionary War. They are a big reason of why the revolution is fought in the first place. And places like here at here at Oriskany are being lost to history. This is a place that a lot of people forget about, but this is probably where the American Revolution was actually won. Now, what happened to the bodies of the men and the one woman that we know of who perished inside of Oriskany? Well, the Oneida set aside a lot of the Oneida warriors after the battle, and they come back later for the bodies, and they took them and gave them their proper burials. But as far as a lot of the British, the Loyalists, the Seneca Mohawk warriors, and the militiamen from the Tyrone County Militia, they are still here in Oriskany. And it is often debated where they're buried here in Oriskany. No one really knows. They suspect they're maybe in a mass grave somewhere, but regardless of where they are, they're here somewhere. So this place itself is hallowed ground when concerned with the American Revolution. And the roles of the Seneca, Mohawk, and Oneida nations are often forgotten about, but they're painted on this field in blood. And their role in American history and the formation of this country and Canada remain on this field. So with that being said, guys, we're going to get out of here. We're going to continue to the next place. We've got a lot to see and do here in central and upstate New York. And there's a lot of things like Oriskany for us to see. So we're going to continue on. And until the next episode, keep preserving history. Stay safe. We'll see you from the next location.